All right, we're back with another edition of Cardboard Insights for today. Pretty excited about our special guest. We have Derek Summers, who is the founder and CEO of DCI Grading. Derek, how's everything going today?
Things are great. Things are great. It's a beautiful day here in Dallas, so can't wait.
Yeah, and I know that we actually had a conversation last week, which was our introductional call here, and I was pretty, impressed with the fact that you guys are pretty much like doing multiple shows per week here. So I know that it was a big travel week here. So if you don't
Yeah.
mind, just really want to start off kind of like with that, and then we'll kind of like jump into like DCI. But from a dealer's perspective, or even kind of like from an exhibitor perspective, which is what kind of like DCI kind of is, walk us actually through the process of getting locked into a show that you're gonna have to travel to, and how you split up the teams, and how that fun stuff looks like.
Yeah, so I think in order to explain that best, probably talk about what we do a little bit, right? So if you're unfamiliar with DCI, so we're a grading company. We've been in business for a couple of years now. And what we do primarily for our business piece at the moment is we meet customers on site at shows and we do a raw review of their cards for them. And then we're able to give those back to you at the show. So it's cool. So you come up and usually it's, an hour to 2 hour type of wait, drop your cards off and be able to pick them up a couple hours later, and then all of the cards have been wiped and prepped, and then they're sealed inside of a card saver, and then they have a tamper-proof seal that's on it with your final grade. So all that is done at a show, which is really unique. So obviously you're not getting that with some of the bigger companies, and this has all been going on for a couple of years leading up to us launching our slabs, which is going to be in the summertime. So that's coming up this summer. So now getting to your question, we travel all over the country. Last weekend, in between when you and I last talked, I was in California. We had a different team that was in San Antonio. And as I've looked at the board that I have upcoming shows, so we're filming this on May 4th. So that's what, like Star Wars Day or whatever I think it's called. But we are 12 weeks away from the National. And obviously we all know that's the biggest show of the year. And we have 19 shows between now and the National over the next 12 weeks. So it's just a massive coordination effort on our part to be able to get the right teams, the graders, be a part of these shows, all the scheduling, the travel for all of our team to be able to get to them.
No, not bad. And yeah. So I was kind of like taking a step forward when we should have started over there. But anyway, and when we actually first talked here, you had mentioned that DCI has kind of like been kicking some tires for a couple of years.
Mhm.
How did you get started, and what prompted you to kind of create your own grading company?
Sure. Yeah. So our company was actually a submission group. So we would submit for PSA and Beckett on behalf of customers. And so from there, what we started to do was customers would still send us cards and be like, hey, can you let me know if I should submit that or not submit this or whatever the case might be. And so we started doing reviews for customers and telling them, hey, you should, we believe this card's an 8 as an example. You should probably not send this, or we think that this card's a 9 or a 10 or whatever it might be, and you should send them. And so we helped to rule out cards for customers so that they wouldn't waste their money and time with grading for that respect. So that's how it began. And then we started tracking our progress over time of like, hey, how good are we, right? How good are our internal graders? And our head of grading that we have has been grading for quite a long time. He didn't work for a grading company, but he submitted to them and has been in the hobby for years and years before DCI was ever born. So he was the main person. We would track his accuracy. We had a 96% accuracy rate to get our grader better when we were tracking that. And so then it was like, well, cool. Now we started to gain a reputation. Then we started doing that same service that we provided as just a mail-in service, which is what it was when we were a submission company. But then we would do it for customers at shows. And then we would still take those submissions. And then eventually we moved away from the submission thing and said, hey, here's the deal. We'll do the service that we provided and charge our fee. And you can take it to anywhere you want to. You can submit to PSA or Beckett or SGC or whoever you wanted to. That was no problem. We just wanted to help you get the best cards, the best prep work, and all that kind of stuff done. While we did that, it was all about reputation. And of course, we've been planning, if you probably didn't think this yet, we've been planning for a long time to move to our own slabs. It just took a process of like, do you want to buy something off the shelf? Do you want to build something custom? What are you going for? What's the back end of the system look like? There were so many business pieces that had to be done for us to transition into a full-blown grading company, which is where we're at now.
No, that's kind of great here. And if you don't kind of mind here, would you mind giving us maybe some tips and some tricks and where? All right, let's just say you have a card here and you're thinking about having it graded.
Yep.
Are there like 2 or 3 things that really stick out on your mind here and where? Okay, you know what? It's got to check this box, and this box, and if those core 2 or 3 things are actually met here, you probably have something that's worth submitting.
Yeah. So when the rise in price of grading fees, obviously that hurt a lot of people. So, we used to be able to submit cards for $10 a card back in the day,
Sure.
but a couple years ago, right? $10 a card. Then it bumped up to, what did PSA go to when they shut down? 300, I think, right? And it completely shut down how the market was. And you saw a lot of things that didn't go super well in that point. From our standpoint, I still look at a few factors. So number one, I look and go like, okay, well, where is the value of the card comparative to the grading cost? That doesn't mean that you have to have a $500 card to absorb a $50 grading fee from PSA as an example. It doesn't mean that. It means you got to make sure that if it's a $50 card with a $50 grading fee, that if it gets a 9 as an example, you're not going to get destroyed. Because what if a 9 is selling for $40, right? You actually went backwards $10 from the raw value and your whole grading fee, and of course time, right? So I would be very careful with some of those. So I would always plan those things out. There's still plenty of cards that are in the market that might be a $15 card with a $50 grading fee that sells for $250. They've become more rare than what they used to be. And don't quote me on the number, but maybe it's
Sure.
a global optic base card, right? I'm making this up on the spot. That's a $15 card that may go to $200 if it gets a PSA 10. Cool, that's good money. But if it gets a 9 and it sells for 22, that's a big risk. And I'm a numbers and an analytics person personally. And so because of that, I would dig into pop reports for cards. So you talk about so this is part number 2. So number 1 is making sure the fees and stuff make sense. Part
Yeah.
2 is dig into pop reports for the set and figure out how is the set grading, right? If you were to, in this same fictitious scenario, find out that LaMelo Ball's optic is grading 90% of them are getting a PSA 10, which I doubt it is, but say they were, well, now you could start to say, well, if I bought 10 of them, in theory, 9 of the 10 should get a 10, and you can start to do the math to make sure that it makes sense to take that risk for yourself. So that's probably step number 2. And then step number 3, if you don't know how to prep a card for yourself, watch some YouTube, watch some videos, figure out how to do it, or get someone to teach you, because that is extremely important. You can't fix something like centering. You can't fix something like corners, that kind of stuff. We all need to know those things, but so many people send in cards that they don't know how to prep a card. Now from DCI, we do that. It's not something that we charge extra for. It's part of our process, our pre-grading process. But if you don't know how to do that and you're going to just send into one of the major grading companies, they're not going to do that for you. And so you need to learn how to do that piece. I believe that everyone can learn corners and centering and edges and that kind of stuff over time, but you need to know how to prep 100%.
No, that's a excellent kind of point here. So with the services that you guys are kind of providing right now, is it more? I mean, are you still doing the submission kind of prep services on top of what you're actually doing from a grading perspective, or is it
No, we don't.
completely
Yeah,
shifted and we're just grading stuff? We're taking that next step.
Yep. Yeah, we're just grading stuff. And then the other thing I would tell you too is that a lot of people are selling our stuff, our reviewed versions of cards on eBay. I mean, go take a search for DCI 10 and look, DCI 10 or DCI 9 as an example, and just see what they're selling for compared to the raw value. And you'll see some massive increases. And the reason I bring up like LaMelo Ball optic, this wasn't that long ago. It's one that we featured on our Instagram, but someone had sold one in a DCI 10. It sold for, I think it was $51 or $53. Don't quote me. It's right in that range. And the base was selling for like 10 or $12. So that customer took a $10 card. They put a $10 fee in getting it done from us and got a $31 return on it. That's pretty good. Again,
From
PSA
a percentages perspective,
200, right? And that's cool. But that was a really good return for that customer.
That's great. And how many kind of submissions would you guys say that you're kind of handling on on a weekly basis?
Last year we did a little bit over 60,000 submissions. A typical week right now between both the office and the shows, right around like 2,500 a week.
Are you actually kind of like, seeing that, hey, you know what, we see more basketball than baseball, or more baseball than hockey? I'm just trying to think what is kind of like the sweet spot and where people are saying, all right, you know what, for these types of products, obviously DCI is a go-to kind of choice.
Yeah, without a
Or
doubt,
is
we
it pretty
see,
pretty
we tend to
broad?
see more ultra modern than we do anything else, right? Like that's still the current wave of where things are at. We tend to see that. We still see a ton of basketball come in. I'm not seeing a lot of football coming in right now. Obviously, out of sight, out of mind, kind of in the football realm. We have seen some baseball showing up. Mostly like Wander Franco and some of that kind of stuff. That's like the newest hottest thing that's out there. I don't see a ton of hockey, but I will tell you one thing about hockey is that it's location dependent. So when we do more shows in like the Northeast, as an example, we tend to see more vintage cards that tend to happen in the Northeast. And then, of course, the further north that we get in the country, the more hockey we tend to see. So that is one thing there. We were just at stuff in the West Coast, and it was mostly ultra modern of what we saw on the West Coast, except for a few random customers that had like some early to late 80s type of stuff.
Makes sense here. But you guys are touching some vintage kind of stuff here. So I'm just kind of wondering in terms of like the breakdown. Are you like 95% modern, 5% vintage, or how
Yeah,
how does this split kind of take place with what you're coming across?
Yeah, again, it always depends on the location. That's one of the biggest things that we see is it's really location dependent. So I would say overall, it's maybe 10% vintage. And when I think vintage, I'm thinking,
Correct.
50s,
Yeah.
60s and before. It's maybe 10%. And in what gets mailed into us, so because obviously we do all the stuff out of our office in addition to our shows, it's like maybe 5% vintage. Most of the stuff that's getting shipped into us is definitely in the ultra modern realm. When we go West Coast, it tends to be more ultra modern. When we go East Coast, it tends to probably get to 25% vintage, somewhere in that range, if we get out to the East Coast and the Northeast.
No, perfect. And hey, look, you know what? From a grading perspective, obviously there's some big players in the marketplace right now, SGC, PSA, and things like that.
Yep.
Anything you can kind of give us with regards to how you guys are different from some of these bigger players, or maybe there's certain technological assets that you guys kind of have that you feel that you're at the cutting edge of just whether help us to kind of get like a little bit of a better understanding of how you as a CEO and the founder of an organization are looking to distinguish yourselves from some of the other guys that are out there.
Yeah. So one of the big things for DCI is it's transparency and education, right? Like we wanted to educate our customer. If you ever meet us at a show, we'll sit down, we'll have conversations. We'll walk through binders of cards with people. That's not what we like to do, but when we get in those situations, we do it. And it's always like, hey, I really wouldn't do this if I were you. We have all kinds of times where customers bring up cards and we rule them out before even grading them and say, hey, I'll save you the $10. There's a bad corner here. This card might be a 7. There's things like that. Education's real important with us. The other one is transparency. We want people to know why. It's the whole reason that we do the review in the first place is because we want them to know before they go spend the money with the big companies, potentially, of why their card might get what it gets. But as we are trucking forward to the launch of our slabs, one thing that you get is when you go to the back of the slab, there's 2 QR codes. One's going to take you to a basic pop report. Every company has that. We're not setting ourselves apart in that respect. But the other code that's on there is going to bring you to a video review. And that video review is going to be your actual card. And it's going to tell you exactly why it got the grade that it got. So it's going to basically look like a pair of hands there, right, kind of floating, holding your card. And when the grader graded your card, they put notes in our internal system. And then the video review person is going to repeat what the grader's notes are. And then they're also going to point out where those flaws are at. So they may say, hey, you have a little bit edge chipping here right on the right, the right edge of the card. There's 2 little surface marks here. Then they might flip the card over and say that there is a bad corner that's right here on the bottom, the bottom left corner, and they'll point that out. The overall grade of the card is an 8. It'll be about 10 to 15-second videos. They'll be pretty quick, but it will be no questions asked. Why did you get that? You'll be able to then start to pick those flaws out and usually be able to find them obviously pretty easily yourself then.
No, that's great. I mean, that's obviously a short but extremely intense process that you're kind of going through. So that's kind of great. No, and then just Walk us through when you're kind of like, slabbing things up and you're moving towards that, like that process. I mean, look, it's not a secret that some of the other guys that are out in the market today have extensive time consuming processes from the time that the submission takes place, from the time that, that is actually done, and then you're actually getting the cards back here. What is your kind of like, process kind of like, look like in terms of speed and turnaround time?
Yeah, great. So we're going to have, it's either going to be 4 or 5 levels, depending on whether or not you want to
Sure.
like a 1-day walkthrough service. It's not our typical one that people do, but so there's 4 basic levels from that. Think 5-day, 10-day, 15-day, or probably 5, 10, 30. And then 60 is going to be, that bulk rate, which everyone's going to have. We're building that off of 60 business day. Our goal is to obviously stay ahead of that. We definitely will not fall behind. I know where our team is at. I know that those types of things, that's what we've all fallen into in the industry, is falling behind on that. So I know who we have around us, and I know the ability to scale up more teams and those types of things. So we're in a good spot when it comes to that. I know what our current capacity is based on our grading team, because that tends to be our biggest holdup right now, is our grading team. Hey, how many people do you have? How many cards a day can they do? What is that going to look like? And making sure that as we start to approach levels that get us into 40, 45 days, 50 days out from when that was started, that we've made sure that we haven't overextended ourselves and not been able to live up to what we told our customers that we would do. So as we track that, again, we talked about data portions, as we've tracked that, making sure that we can always hit the mark that we are. One other thing to kind of bring up, and this is an advantage of looking at things right now versus in the future, is people that have their cards already graded from us, so they've done the show reviews and all that kind of stuff, will be able to get some advantages when our slabs go live. They'll be able to they can use the bulk rate, that cheaper price that we have, and be able to turn them in half the time. So because we've already looked at that card once, we'll be able to go ahead and do it a little bit quicker for that customer, which is just a big, massive thank you to the industry. Thank you to everyone that supported us for so long. We're going to get those knocked out in 30 days or less for you.
No, that's awesome. And the majority of everything that you're kind of like, doing is all in the Dallas, Texas area, or you kind of spread out like a little bit here?
For our business itself,
Yeah.
So everything. So our headquarters is in Dallas, Texas area. We do have salespeople across the country. We will continue to add more sales team. We will end up having dealers across the country as well. So, group submitters, that kind of stuff. We will be building a whole plan for that. And then we have a group of breakers as well that we'll be taking in more, but we'll end up with breakers as well that we do a lot of work with directly.
Nice. And how big is the team, if you don't mind me asking?
18 people at the moment.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then with regards to, I mean, you did a great job in explaining kind of like the process here. I was kind of like on a price point that the consumer can expect to bear. I mean, obviously we touched upon how some of these things have gotten out of control from like $300 here, but I think you guys are extremely, friendly and are on top of the ball here. I'm just wondering if you can just spend a couple of seconds just walking through the company business model and what type of cost the customer can expect to digest.
Yeah. So a couple things. So number one, when you go and meet us at a show right now and you get those reviews done, they're $10 a card right now. So that's something that we've had for quite a while. It's something that may go up in the future at some point, as well as you'll see less and less events that we do those RCRs at. We don't have an end date for that, but once we get into moving into slabs, obviously the majority of our effort and focus and attention will be in that, but there will be a lot of major key events that we still do the raw review on, which is really just going to be a gold mine for people. So that's that piece right now. The other thing that you have is slab prices. So our bulk rate is going to start at $23 a slab. So it's kind of right in like that middle ground between some of the different companies. It definitely puts it into some of the higher spaces where I believe that our product is. We have, I believe, what's going to be one of the most beautiful slabs on the market. Couple reasons for that. We did use polycarbonate. It's one of the stronger materials that's out there. It's more expensive than any of the other materials of basic plastic or an acrylic. So that's one advantage. It creates an incredible amount of clarity. So that's the first part. So polycarbonate there. There's actually a little bit of a gold tint that's going to be in it. So the edges of the plastic or the edges of the card will have a really cool gold hue to it when it gets in the right amount of sunlight. It won't interrupt anything with the card, but it'll be a really nice look to the overall slab. And you can see even that if you go to like our Instagram account and look at some of the videos. We'll also have a UV coating that's on it. So this is something that, to the best of our knowledge, no other company uses right now, a UV coating on it, because the worry for people is, have you ever seen a card where the autograph potentially faded, or have you ever seen a situation where the card faded because it was on a shelf or on a display piece, and now all of a sudden the colors aren't as vibrant as they used to be? So that's another one. Then you have the video review. So it's like we're continuing to create additional value in the market and creating an ultra premium product for the market.
Now that's great here. And let's see if I can kind of put you on the spot here. If you actually had to kind of pick one, what would you say is the best card or your most favorite card that came through your system so far to date here? Whether it's a, I don't know, 55 Mickey Mantle or a LeBron rookie over here. What would you say is like the favorite product that you got your hands on through DCI?
Yeah, so so it's interesting. So I've been a part of it since obviously the beginning points here. We've seen so much stuff, and why I'm going to bring this up as like a little mini story is that when we started to take on our sales team that hadn't gone to a lot of shows with us, we opened up some threads, like internal threads, so that our sales team could see some of the stuff they're doing. And inside of this card thread, we tend to post like some of the big cards that come into us. And it's so amazing because when they started to see, to your question, they started to see the stuff that was coming into us. They're like, "You guys get this?" I'm like, "Yeah, we get this all the time, right?"
It's Christmas every day,
It is. So the couple quick stories that I had. So we had a person that brought us in 2003 Topps Chrome Dwayne Wade 1/1 pink printing plate autograph. He had it in a little tiny tin box that he had kept it in. All this time, he pulled it himself, and I was like, where has that been sitting at? Like, how come it wasn't graded? It was nothing. He's just had it sitting around. So I thought that was pretty unique. And then we had another customer, actually same show, believe it or not, came up and said he hadn't shown these cards to anyone and just, wanted to kind of get an idea if they were really worth much. And he pulled it out. He had about 12 cards. They were in like his front pocket of his shirt, and he pulled them out, and it was 3 53 Mantles. I think it was 4 Hank Aaron's, and I forget what else he had with them. Clemente,
the front pocket of his shirt,
like out of the front pocket of his shirt, and he was just like, "Here, I got a little stack for you." I mean, it was like an incredible, grouping of vintage. So anyway, those were a couple that definitely stick out in my brain as just unique situations that happen.
Now, this has actually been a lot of fun. It's been great. Really kind of appreciate your time.
Yeah.
If you don't kind of mind here, I got the thing on the bottom of the ticker over here where it's kind of DCI-grading.com in terms of the website here. But any social media accounts that you want to go ahead and plug, or just give us a little bit more information on where people can kind of find you, in addition to the numerous card shows that you'll between now and national and beyond.
Correct. So everything for us, DCI grading, right? Everything for us is at DCI grading. So our TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, trying to think what else, our Twitter, everything is at that. There's some really interesting content on our YouTube. And if you want to know more about grading and even the other grading companies, go to our YouTube. It's about an hour-long video. But when we were at the Mint Collective in Las Vegas, I was fortunate enough to be able to moderate a panel with the president for PSA, the president for Beckett, the president for SGC, and the head of grading for CSG. And I had the 4 of them on a panel for about an hour. And it's one of the most unique situations to be able to ask them questions and, and build around that and see even how these gentlemen all interact with each other. They're in competition, but in the same sense, they're working together, because obviously the grading world is actually pretty small, believe it or not. So that's a really good one, and it's up on our YouTube, the whole channel, or the whole video.
I'll go ahead and find that. I will drop that link in this clip over here.
Yeah,
and we'll go from there. But let's put like a wrap on that. I really kind of appreciate your time, and if you don't mind, maybe we'll kind of steal you for another 5 minutes or so. We'll make some picks around the Suns Mavs game number 2.
Yeah, I mean, we're in Dallas, so I had to pick the Mavs game, so we're going to see what we can do here.
All right, guys, take care.